the one in which there's a killer monster truck. Previously on the road in Supernatural, Dean almost dies by electrocuting a creature, but Sam manages to find a cure, which requires a bound reaper, which they then take care of. And in this week's episode, we're going to talk about Route 666. Our big picture look at Route 66 is Dean is contacted by an old flame, Cassie, who asks him to come and investigate the murder of her father, which she believes is linked to a killer truck. We open with back to our normal formula of checking in on the crime before it happens, where a man is driving on his car on an empty road at night when his radio starts to fritz. We know that usually means something's wonky in the world, and in this case, of course, it means a disappearing black pickup truck. The monster truck continues to pursue the car even though he tries to escape it. It gets rammed and flips the car, killing the person inside. Cut to the brothers at a normal gas station on their way to Pennsylvania when Dean gets a call from an old friend who, as he phrases it, would never reach out if it weren't necessary. So instead of heading to Pennsylvania, they're headed to Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Once again, our locations are somewhat close to each other. Nebraska and Missouri are not far away per se, but we also don't know how far they were on their trek to Pennsylvania when they had to make their way to Cape Girardeau, Missouri instead. On the way to Cape Girardeau, in a short conversation, Sam discovers that Cassie is actually an old girlfriend, as in somebody that Dean had a relationship with for more than one night, and he's completely floored. He's even more floored to realize that Dean told her the truth about what they do. Sam is pretty much having this conversation by himself until they get to Cape Girardeau. When they get there, Cassie and her father's friend Jimmy are talking to the mayor about the death of her father and another black man, and she is claiming that he's not truly investigating because they were black. When Dean asks for further explanation, Cassie shares that her father had been seeing some sort of truck around, and also that there was something obviously weird going on because the cars have been kind of flipped and they look like they've been crushed into something, but there are no signs of a collision of any kind, and there's only one set of tracks. During this conversation, it's very clear that Cassie is incredibly happy to see Dean, and vice versa, much to Sam's amusement, and we'll dive deeper into that in the family business segment. When getting introduced around, Cassie claims that they are friends of hers from college, which is actually true in this case. Cut to night, and now another car, the man we saw earlier speaking with the mayor, is being chased down by a big scary monster truck. And of course, he meets his end. The next day, we're at the crime scene again, and Cassie is incredibly feisty and sharing her frustration with the fact that no one is truly investigating what is going on. The mayor is still being less than helpful, and when accused once again of being racist, he says that Cassie should really ask her mother as to why he is not a racist, which introduces a very intriguing level of interest here. So the brothers get to investigating a little bit more seriously. They're dressing up, but they are not dressing up to go to the funeral. They're actually dressing up to impersonate insurance agents this time, to talk to the friends of the different victims and find out what's what. While they're donning the fancy suits, Sam continues to tease his brother about the relationship, even though the woman he is teasing him about literally just lost her father. Using their insurance agent disguise, they go around and talk to the friends and hear about a local legend, kind of like the Flying Dutchman. But it's a big truck around killing black men, but it's about a couple of decades out of date. The man that they are speaking with, who was a friend of the victims, claims that there was a big black truck just like that one, going around and killing black men in the 1960s. But back then, no one cared. And there was no real investigation to find out exactly what had happened. So they've got a hint, but they don't exactly know where to take it. Dean posits it's like the Flying Dutchman, such as the pirate ship that disappeared and then reappears on the waters. And as they continue to investigate, Sam suggests that Dean should go over and share the news with Cassie and hopefully be able to resolve their unfinished business. Cassie lets Dean in, and they immediately go to opposite corners, literally in a doorway, to discuss what's going on. She's obviously a little wary that Sam is not with him, and they have a heated exchange about how Dean opened himself up and shared what was really going on because he didn't want to leave her without any sort of explanation. And of course, she took that conversation, accused him of being crazy, and kicked him out, never to be heard of again until she actually needed him and realized that maybe he wasn't being so untruthful. She's incredibly confrontational during this conversation, whereas Dean is calm and collected while sharing his viewpoint. And for some reason, it ends in the two of them deciding that they should rekindle their sexual relationship. While they're having a good time, the mayor is having less of a great time and is actually being hunted down by the big black truck. And the mayor, of course, ends as well in a crushed car. This does make me wonder if Jimmy or Cassie's father had actually shared that they had been seeing a big black truck around, because it sounds like from what Cassie had shared that her father had been seeing the truck around for a few days, if not weeks, before he actually died. So the fact that both then Jimmy and the mayor get attacked by the same truck makes me wonder, did they also see this truck for days, or was it just a one-and-done appearance? Because if so, the fact that the mayor seems even more reluctant to investigate could be because he was freaked out about seeing this truck and then was a little reluctant because he didn't want it to be true for himself either. All kinds of questions raised by this as to how long the haunting of the truck was going on and various other pieces to it, but ultimately the mayor dies. Dean and Cassie are basking in the afterglow, discussing the state of their relationship when they parted ways. He's not trying to make excuses, but she stops him and is about to probably share a little bit more into what was going on in her life when they're interrupted by Sam, who says that the mayor is dead. Gotta wonder, how on earth did Sam know to be at the crime scene? Why is it that the local police are letting this random outsider come to the crime scene, as it's clear that both he and Cassie, who is also not a police officer, have been at these murder scenes, and no one has batted an eye. And we find out a little bit more about what was going on with the mayor. The mayor was actually killed on the Dorian family's property, who Cassie had mentioned used to own about half the town, including the newspaper where she worked. Turns out the mayor had recently purchased the property and had decided to bulldoze the house just about a week ago. This is a clear indication that somehow the spirit was released when the house was bulldozed, as apparently when repairs, maintenance, or remodeling is done to homes that a spirit has died in, it can suddenly aggravate the spirit. It's nighttime again, and Cassie's alone at home, and hears the truck gunning outside of her house. She gets frightened a little bit and frantically closes all of the blinds and curtains, because apparently that's going to make a difference, before realizing she should probably call Dean. She does, and he heads on over. However, the car, unlike the last 3 times we have seen it, where it just goes straight for the victims and runs them down, even though Cassie is in a stationary location, the car never actually approaches the house. It just revs a lot, makes a lot of noise, and drives around the outside. It's finally time to talk to Cassie's mother, even though she has been rather reluctant to have a conversation. And we discover that not only did Mrs. Robinson date Cyrus, the man accused of being the person behind the scary truck from the 1960s, she recognizes the truck. She dated him before dating Cassie's father, and broke up with Cyrus when he realized she was in a relationship with Martin, and he became crazed. She shares a story that around town, black men had begun to go missing, and her and Cassie's father were planning on getting married, but the night before they were to be married inside the church, someone set fire to the church, killing a children's choir that had been practicing inside. Then Cyrus ran into Martin, started to beat him with a baseball bat, and Martin did not take it and started to fight back, accidentally killing Cyrus with the bat. Or maybe not an accident. It's really unclear as to the narrative. And of course, we are being told this story from a third party once removed. Martin called his buddies, Jimmy and the previous man who had died, who I do not believe we get a name for. And they helped them dispose of Cyrus, putting him in the trunk and dumping him in the swamp. The mayor knew or severely suspected what had gone on, but because he also was pretty sure that Cyrus was the person killing all of the black men, and at the time the police were less than excited about investigating, he let it go and did not investigate further. So Sam and Dean realize they have to get the truck up so they can burn the body. Some way, somehow, even after 40 years, the truck is easily accessible inside of the swamp, and Cyrus's body has never actually floated out. And some way, somehow, Dean and Sam also remain completely dry, even though there must have been some way that they had to connect the truck to the car that they're using to dredge it out of the swamp. They begin the salt and burn process on the body, but during this process, the phantom truck appears, and they decide to split up. Sam will stay with the body and somehow figure out a method to get rid of the truck, as it's clear that the body wasn't just the only place the spirit was residing, but it has also inhabited this truck that was a part of its death story. And Dean should go in the car and play phantom chicken with the phantom truck. He calls up Sam and is not having a lot of success with outrunning this truck. When Sam gives him coordinates in very precise directions, including being able to go 7/8 of a mile, or 8/10 of a mile, and then turn around but not go any further. And it is an extreme game of chicken as the truck barrels towards the car, only for it to completely disappear as it crosses the imaginary boundary line that we don't really see. On the phone, Sam shares this is the site of the church that was burned down, most likely by this spirit, but apparently holy ground does mean that spirits can't cross into it. And I guess it also means that if they try and cross, the spirits are also completely destroyed. So even though the church is no longer there, the ground is still hollowed and the truck completely disintegrates. Later, Cassie and Dean say their goodbyes. Cassie says she's not sure if they'll meet again, but Dean says absolutely. He's confident they'll be together, even though they haven't really had a conversation around what the next steps might mean for their relationship. She's clearly convinced that there is no future for it. Dean is hopeful and optimistic, and they get back on the road. Sam asks Dean, in a reversal of many of the conversations they've had so far, if Dean has ever considered giving up hunting or giving up the lifestyle, to which Dean just smiles, and they once again drive off into the sunset. So the local legend this week is actually a little bit more modern than we're used to, and does not involve any sort of creatures, but it does involve a death story. And that is that there is a big scary monster black truck that is hunting down black men, and that was happening in the 1960s. And so now the same black truck is showing up right before we see our victims die. Dean also mentions the Flying Dutchman, a famous ghost story of a ship that was lost at sea with all hands that occasionally can be glimpsed by sailors drifting along on the ocean, but there is never anyone that they can actually see on it. And that is, of course, the Flying Dutchman. Who are we this week? They get to play somewhat themselves when they are introduced around as friends of Cassie's from college. Dean did meet Cassie when she was in college at her college location. Of course, Sam did not. And of course, Dean was not in school at the time. But of course, they met when she was in college. So you could claim that that is being truthful to themselves. They also impersonate insurance agents and go around and talk to the friends, trying to figure out if there should be a claim paid on any of the accidents. And you may hear some thunder and shaking in the background of this episode. That is because a massive thunderstorm is raging behind me, which I found apropos since so many of the deaths in this episode take place in thunderstorms on dark roads. This is when I had the time to record, so I figured I would try anyway and hoped that the thunder would not be heard, but I do believe it is showing up in the background, which I think is quite funny. We also don't get introduced to any other supernatural baddies, but do find out that if assault and burn doesn't work, you do have to destroy the object that the spirit is involved with as well, which we've already seen several times, including in Hookman, when it is another piece of metal. However, destroying a truck, especially destroying a massive truck as big as that one, in a fast manner, of course, is a big question mark. So apparently, if you trick a spirit into going into hollowed ground, that can also cause them to be destroyed. The body count for this episode is 3 people. We get the black man previously, which I do believe, according to the Supernatural Wiki, his name is Clayton. We get Cassie's father, Martin Robinson. We get Cassie's father's friend, Jimmy. And we get the mayor, Harold Todd. And of course, off screen, we mention the killings of Cyrus and at least 3 other black men that were murdered by Cyrus in the 1960s. But in present time, if you will, and non-creature deaths, we just have 4 people. So this episode is a solid enough episode. Oddly enough, according to IMDb, it is actually the most watched episode of the entire series, with 5.82 million viewers on the original airing. As I've talked about before, though, this is also around the time when streaming started to become a thing, and television stations were not really set up to accurately depict. Television stations weren't set up to actively track how viewers were viewing the show, including DVRs, DVR plus 7 days, and if streaming was next day or even later. So I'm assuming that 5.82 is actually on like when it was live, but I find that very interesting if in 15 years it never actually beat an airing of what I consider an okay but not fantastic episode of the first season. So that is a fun fact to note. The bombing of the church where a choir was practicing is probably referring to the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing in 1960s. Of course, that one took place in Alabama, I believe, where 4 young girls who were part of the choir did die in the bombing. Again, this is a solid enough episode, but nothing too earth-shattering. It's a solid story, especially in terms of the reveal that the mayor is not indifferent and in actuality probably is reluctant to do any sort of investigation because of what might be found out and how that would impact Cassie's mother. That is my assumption, at least, because if the mayor knew what had happened so many years ago and not done anything about it, it could have implications on the mother in terms of, how the town would view her now. If it came out that her husband, who she is in mourning for, was actually involved in a murder. Also, of course, there brings the question, since the mayor is a victim of the monster truck as well, had he been seeing this monster truck around? Had he also been having visions, and was he so freaked out about it he didn't want to do a further investigation because of the implications of what it might mean for himself? I think these are all really great things to keep in mind when we talk about that conversation that Cassie is having with the mayor and about the area that it's happening in. Also, I think the portrayal of one family owning half the town of Cape Girardeau is a little bit off. Cape Girardeau is actually a quite sizable city, and it's a college town, which is not at all clear from what we see on screen. I just find this very interesting. This is the second episode to take place in the state of Missouri so far. In a very short run so far, and I'm actually from Missouri. I've been to Cape Girardeau, and I grew up in St. Louis. So to see the depiction of these cities, it does make it a bit jarring. Of course, other cities I would never think twice of that I've never been to, and I'm sure locals of those would find it jarring as well. So overall, we get a baddie, we get a monster truck instead of just a person. We never actually see Cyrus's ghost, we just see the monster truck, which also shows a very deep connection with that ghost and him, I would say, to the truck, because we never see the person, right? Usually, especially for example, in the case of the Hook Man, we saw the man, and the man was still a spirit and still able to attack people, even though the body had been burned because of the metal still being there. But in this case, we never actually see the ghost. We only see the ghost truck, which I found very intriguing as well. So the family business, we get some really great background on the boys growing up here, and a little bit of a break in perceptions and how we see ourselves and how we see our family members. So Sam is completely floored to the point where he's kind of in a state of awe and shock when hearing about Cassie and when watching Dean interact with Cassie, and when finding out that Dean actually told Cassie the truth about what they do. And it's in dialogue very clear that one of the key rules growing up for them was that they were to tell no one what they did, which of course could be a very isolating experience for anyone, especially since so far from what we have seen, it's not clear how long they stayed in any one place. Did they have a home base? I don't know. But it's very clear that the boys grew up knowing about the hunting world, so they also weren't allowed to tell anyone about it. And that included any partners that you had. So, did the boys have partners growing up? Were they dating? Did they make friends? Did they make best friends? Or did they kind of just have each other? So it's also very interesting to note that not only did Dean tell Cassie, and it's implied, of course, that Dean must have been in Ohio for more than just a day or two, right? It was probably a couple of weeks at least. But Sam was also completely shocked to realize that Dean loved her. And so I want to dive into this just a little bit because so far, Sam's reaction seems completely beyond what we have seen of Dean. Dean has yet to actually successfully hit on anybody that we have seen on screen. Not saying it hasn't happened off screen. And he does mention, he's mentioned, he'll say hello with a nice smile to a waitress or what have you. But we have not seen Dean flirt successfully with any women. In fact, every single woman they've interacted with, where there was a potential for some sort of connection, has latched onto Sam. Even just a few weeks after Sam lost his girlfriend, we have the episode of Hookman. If we're going to just assume, they mention an asylum they've been hunting for 6 months, and Hookman is about halfway through between the pilot and the asylum. Let's say it's 3 months after he has lost his girlfriend in a very, very extreme manner, and he's befriending the victim who also just lost her boyfriend. She's coming on to him, she's making out with him, and he does seem reluctant to leave at the end of the episode. So those are the only instances we have of any sort of interaction between the brothers and a woman, and it's for Sam, right? Every woman so far has gone for Sam, and we haven't really seen any instances of Dean picking up one-night stands. And yet, Sam is completely shocked that not only did Dean date somebody, but that he dated somebody long enough to fall in love and decide that he wanted to break what Sam considers a cardinal rule, in which you don't tell anyone about hunting, because it's clear he told Cassie the truth. And he's also incredibly upset that Dean told Cassie the truth. As he says it, "I was with Jess for 1.5 years and never told her anything." You know this chick a few weeks and you tell her everything? Here's the thing though. Sam at that point had been away from his father for 3 years at least. If Sam and Jess were dating for 1.5 years and Sam, let's say, did the regular 4 years at undergrad because he's about to go in for an interview to go to grad school and go to law school. So it's been 4 years. He's away from the influence for 2.5 years, then he starts dating her, and then another 1.5 years passes, and he still holds to this cardinal rule of telling no one. He does not share with Jess, even though he's having nightmares. He does not share with Jess about what he does and what they're up to, and the things that go bump in the night, which also might have implications as well as to why he never said anything about his nightmares. At least that's an assumption I'm making, that one of the reasons he seems so guilty in Bloody Mary is because he was having nightmares and he never told her. So is that part of the reason he never told her? Does he partially blame their father for him not telling Jess at all that he was having these nightmares? Of course, I'm going to assume he had absolutely no control and there was nothing he could have done, obviously. But is this kind of what's going on in the back of his head? Of course, also the fact that he hadn't connected with his brother in 2 years. Based off of dialogue throughout the series so far, he had left 4 years beforehand, and then he hadn't spoken to Dean in 2 years before Dean came looking for him to go search for their father. So the fact that he seems completely shocked that Dean had a life, Dean might have had a relationship, Dean might have changed from what he knew growing up, is kind of shocking that he didn't realize it was a possibility. But also, he's very closed to the idea that it is a possibility. He's incredulous about this fact that an ex-girlfriend essentially is calling Dean and that he shared. So this is a really nice deep dive into the fact that the brothers were apart. So far, we've seen them hunting together, even when they had the brief argument a few episodes ago in Scarecrow and they parted ways. They did end up coming back together and seem to be gung-ho about working together. So it is very interesting to kind of have that reminder for both of them that they did spend time apart and they had lives that were going on that did not involve each other, and that clearly they've had no conversations about what that was like, what happened in their time apart, and what that might mean for who they are and who they were when they parted ways originally when Sam went off to college. Also, of course, we have that glimpse as to what their father considered a cardinal rule, and for Sam as well, who showcases so far that he hates following his father's orders. He doesn't want to. He thinks he knows better than his father and does not believe they should be good little soldiers. He's still capped to this one rule about not sharing about what goes bump in the night with anyone he's seeing or dating. So I find that very interesting as well, because Dean, who so far we have seen is the good soldier, does not question orders, and as soon as he's given an order, he says, "Yes, sir," and implements. We have not seen him rebel, and yet in this quite significant way he did, and it was years ago. So it showcases to us that maybe Dean doesn't always want to follow orders. Maybe he doesn't always do it in the first place. And, giving some idea that there might be some rebellion fomenting as well for Dean's side of things. So overall, the story itself is not too exciting. Another note to make, and this is in the IMDb trivia section, is that especially during this first season, the network very rarely gave the showrunners any sort of notes about what they needed to put in or change about the show itself. But for this episode, they did make a point of sharing that they did not want Dean to be on the bottom. Dean should not be depicted on bottom. The girl should not be depicted on top during the love scene. And so, of course, being the producers that they are, they made sure that the piece that made it to film and the piece that made it to publication has Cassie on top, which I just find very interesting, as that being a note that you would get from the network, I guess, to make sure that we all realize that Dean is still very much manly and gung-ho, which I don't think we need any sort of indication for that. But I found that very interesting as a trivia note from IMDb, that the producers had been told not to use that sort of footage, which I found very interesting. And of course, raises all kinds of other questions, but I don't really want to dive into those. So overall, a solid episode, a solid continuation after of course, our previous much more emotional episode, where Dean was almost dying, so now we're kind of learning a little bit more about his background and his life, of course, and what's going on there. And we don't know what's happening next. So questions to contemplate. Will we see Cassie again? I do believe this is the third or fourth time we've encountered somebody and we've heard them say that they'll look them up again or they can't wait to see them again. So I'm curious, are we going to see Cassie again? Because at least at this point, Dean seems rather gung-ho. He really wants to stay in touch. Will they? Will they stay in touch? Who knows? Another question to contemplate is, has Dean rebelled in any other ways that Sam may not know about? Because if he's willing to break this rule, which seems to be a pretty big cardinal rule, what else is he willing to break? Great question, I think, for all of us to contemplate as well. After the last episode, did their father ever contact them about Dean? Does he know that Dean is now not going to die? Also a really great question. And what other ways can we have a twist on the ghost and spirit narrative? So far, we've only had one salt and burn, and that's done just the body. This is our second, of course, but we've seen them inherit objects. We've seen them inherit cars now, and the car seems to be able to drive itself. Does the spirit always show up, or is it show up just in other ways? In this instance, just the car, not the person. What else might it show up as? So really great, just little tidbits to contemplate for the future. And of course, the next question is always, where are they headed next? So we will see you on the road again in Nightmare. You're listening to Supernatural First Watch podcast. Don't miss out on future episodes. Subscribe to the show in your podcast player of choice, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music. Got opinions, theories, or comments to share about the road so far? Send in your thoughts at the email in the show notes. Want to help support the podcast? Want fun behind-the-scenes looks, extra episodes, and early access? And a shout-out on the show? Subscribe to the Patreon in the show notes below. I'll see you next time in our next episode, Nightmare.